Welcome back. Just in case you joined us, this is KBC News Check, and on this hour we are talking about the politics of the day. And you bear me witness that for the last 1 week we've been treated to quite a show of politics, both from the government side and also from the opposition, led by the Azimio Brigade. And the day before yesterday, we were also treated to some, yesterday, we were also treated to some drama. Yesterday, the president talked about, yesterday and the day before yesterday, talked about the rallies. He's talking about their powerful individuals who are financing the Azimio Brigade protest. And he adds and says that it's a ploy to distract Kenyans from the tax payments. And he says these people are the ones who do not want to pay taxes. On the other hand, Azimio, led by former Premier Raila Odinga, says that we need a forensic audit by the Commonwealth in the next 2 weeks, or else. He hasn't exactly given the other side of the coin, and that is what we're talking about. Allow me to engage you, Wakili. First things first, the head of state talks about the opposition is blackmailing the government. This is a very powerful statement coming from a head of state. And you, earlier on, we saw some of the senators there actually go head to head with the former president, say that it is Uhuru Kenyatta who is financing all this as a plot to scuttle the tax collection exercise. Wakili.
I mean, I'm laughing because there are very interesting statements and sentiments coming from the people in government, because you don't expect that. Don't expect. I think they're giving very high mileage to the opposition, and I think the opposition is feeling it. It's getting happy, it's getting excited, and it's making these statements so that they keep making the statements. And of course, with that, they're building the profile of the opposition. You know, at the time the elections were announced, the opposition was totally vanquished. Didn't have any voice. Every member of opposition seemed confused. They didn't know where they were. They are now trying to find their footing. With these statements, they are realizing, Kube, we are very relevant. We have just been sleeping on our laurels. Let's keep on. And they're actually putting, they're stepping on the gas pedal on that. And the government is actually now feeling the heat. And to the level that the president is actually making such statements, and the people from Kenya Kwanza making such statements, I think it's sad. We need to expect better of the people in government, because first, there are challenges which are which are with Kenyans, which they need to sort, because that's their responsibility. Nobody else is going to come, because that is the work they were given, the askren they were given, their promises they gave to people on the campaign trail. We have not seen much of those being sorted. Now, if they start engaging in a tower of war with the opposition, which opposition has no mandate in running government, it means we are going into the political realms as we have been having them previously, and that's what Kenyans don't want. Because Kenyans are against the aspect of people politicking throughout the entire 5 years and not doing much. So the statements, I think, are rather unfortunate. I think the aspect where they say that the former president is funding, I think I mean, they need to provide the evidence. I don't think the former president is also foolish to also do something of the sort, because all they need, I think, is to just to push him, because he's still a member of Azimio. I think they want to just him to make a statement to denounce Azimio, because why will the president appoint him to a different job if he feels that he is blackmailing him, and the guy is still earning from government? So, I mean, you know, you need to weigh these things and see the politics behind it, so that even if that were to be the case, then that nothing stops you from because the other statement he made in Central was that it's the cartels who are behind the coffee, the milk, the tea, who are also funding. So which is which? Is it the former president or the cartels? And who are these people? Is not naming clearly who is the president. He should actually be pointing out these people and stopping this cartel, because he has such powers which has been given by Kenyans.
And talking about mentioning, I remember also the former Premier Raila Odinga talked about there's a dossier by one of the employees of IEBC, and more, he added and talked about there were Chebukati visiting him together with 2 other commissioners. These are some of the things that, just like the president said, during the case at the Supreme Court in August, you should have brought all this out.
I think for Raila, I think he's just playing politics. You know, he's a good politician, so he sits back, hears what people are saying, and of course he has his own version of the truth. He mixes both to deliver a political message which is going to endear with the Wananchi. And he's good at that, so we can give it to him that, I mean, he's a talented politician. So once he speaks that, of course, it demonstrates that there's some truth to everything which has been said, which is, of course, in the public arena. And once he does that, and, you know, he speaks to his royal fans to the heart, and they feel like, yeah, I think these things are true. And, you know, that is all he needs to throw the government into confusion. And we have seen really the government, of course, now jumping up and making all sorts of statements which we cannot be able to verify. Which I think, I mean, the president invited the opposition to come and check him, and you know, they're doing their thing. So I don't think it's upon him to also start checking them back.
Okay.
It's upon him to actually deliver to Kenyans. That's what is important.
Torosterdt, I'm going to take it a few steps back. Before the election, President William Ruto was elected on the platform of bettering the economy, lowering taxes, the hustler narrative. Now he is the president. And if we look at inflation and look at the cost of life back then, if we look at the cost of electricity, fuel, before election, it was far much better than what we have right now. And the opposition could use this as their basement or their foundation to push their interest, because high cost of living is still there. We talked about when the Bible is down, the cost of living is going to come down. It has gone high. We look at electricity is going to come high. We have some public participation. It's a matter we're going to be touching on a little bit. But the opposition could use this as their solid foundation for this protest. What do you think?
Troy, you know, in the 16th century, there is a term that came into the English language. It's called Potemkin villages, and that means building facades. And so there was a very senior ranking official of the Russian government called Potemkin, and so he used to build villages that have been like made of cardboard by very good artists. So when people are visiting his city, he tells them, you see, the houses are made for the poor. These are now just the poor people. These are not even the ones in affluence. So people would look at the artwork and like, wow, this is amazing work. So clearly, this government of William Ruto is professionals of building Potemkin villages. Everything they told the hustlers, and I want to look at the hustlers in the face and tell them, everything they told you is a facade. They told you that the price of unga will dramatically fall. It has not fallen. The price of fuel will fall. It has not fallen. Instead, it's gone higher. They told you that the taxes will be reviewed. In fact, more taxes have been added unto you. So your suffering is here as the hustler nation. And that is the government you're going to be with for the next 5 years. When we come to the other shenanigans of who is funding who, I think the president is just a man in a dark room chasing a black cat that is not even there. They got the mandate. You're in government. Now you have to turn around the clock, and you know, those fantastic things you're telling us in the political rallies, that manifesto, sit down to it and implement it. But if we continue,
just kindly hold the thought with that. Torosterdt, before we left, you were on a point, but before you finish up your point, I kindly want you to touch on the women representation. Just as CJ is talking about, there's a lot that still needs to be done.
Yeah, I think the issue of women representation is one that we have to look at it from very many perspectives. Number one, I have always said it is very expensive and demanding for a woman to get an elective position. Sometimes women have to work even 3 times more than their male counterparts. And then there are also other issues that surround the whole world of politics and women, their expectations that the community has about women. And once you thrust yourself yourself into politics, people start viewing you differently. So can we come to a place and time where we look at women as leaders and we gauge all the leaders that we have, both men and women, as equal persons before the process, and then we can now choose who will lead us from a point of their ability, character, and personality. Number two, it's about the issue of funding. It's still hard for women to access funding for political activities, and also you cannot really find organizations that are there to maybe support women in politics and empower them in terms of training, in terms of capacity building, and even funding. Number three, it's also the whole issue of what have the women that have gone into that space showed in terms of motivating other women into vying for those positions, or do they go there and then they turn into something totally different than even the women sitting back home say, if this is how politics changes someone, then I don't want to get involved. So it's also up to those women that have been in leadership positions already to inspire the generation behind them. And you'll remember notable women like Dr. Julia Odhiambo, who got into politics, and they played their politics with a lot of dignity, respect, and decorum. That during that period, then very many women were yearning to be part of politics. People like Wangari Maathai, people like Martha Karua, they have always, been that motivating factor for women who want to venture into politics. So it's up to those women that are in politics already to expand the space so that it accommodates other women who are outside there, and then to, lead by example so that other women outside there do not fear politics, or they do not say that when somebody gets into politics, they change, they become more like women, they are rough, they are all this, but they still maintain being a woman and, giving that missing ingredient in our politics, because our politics is mostly male-driven. And male-driven, we have, it comes with characteristics or features of hardline stance, chaos, and all that. So we would actually need a lot of women into our political space so that they neutralize this polarization brought about by their male counterparts.
And still on what you were talking about earlier on before we crossed over to the CJ, I would like you also to touch on what the Azimio leader, Raila Odinga, talked about. Want an audit, and they want a forensic audit on the polls, but to be done by the Commonwealth. And I do remember is a few days or a week ago, he told the foreign community that they should not meddle in Kenyan politics. And now you want a Commonwealth, which is largely foreign, to audit our own elections.
I think in the countenance of the law, what the former Prime Minister was asking for is not practical, because the international community has no jurisdiction to audit election outcomes of independent countries, or rather republics that stand on their own. However, it's a political statement that is a precursor to another statement, and if you listen to the full context of the speech was that if they do not do so in the next 2 weeks, then Kenyans are going to take things in their own hands. So I think the second statement is what is important. The other one is just a curtain raiser. Create an environment that looks like, yes, before we went to the streets, before we did this, we actually implored or entreated the whole world to come and check out and see and address these particular injustices. However, what we need to discuss is, does Raila Odinga have a valid point or not? He indeed has a valid point. We have come from an election that embarrasses us, because you can imagine you come out of an election conducted by a chair of the IEBC who was deeply indicted in 2017, and even after the 2017 election, we had commissioners resigning and citing that it was difficult to work with this man. And then we had an officer, a senior officer in that that commission killed just before the election. And Kenyans, being of good manners, we still went into that election, knowing that the person who was holding the vault has been killed. After that, we had even a commissioner fleeing the country. And then in the backstage of all those shenanigans, his term is still renewed. We see it is fit for him to conduct the election, the election of 2022. And after he has conducted that election, he reveals to us very saddening things, that actually he was approached by NSAC, who wanted him to change the results of the election. When asked, did you have these results at the time you were discussing? No, we didn't have the results. Had you seen who was leading? No. So what was NSAC wanting to change if you didn't have the results? And then number two, even if you agreed to change the results, what is the procedure you are going to use to change the results? Because you have told us that these results were being pushed to the portal where everybody was seeing what was happening. So how would we change that which you have put to a portal that is public? How would you revisit that portal and start changing it? So he was actually telling us covertly so that maybe results can be changed, because people cannot come and discuss with you that which they know cannot be done.
Yes.
And so if that is the entire atmosphere we are operating in, and then how do we even trust you? And then after the elections, this man is awarded the highest honor of the land, Order of the Elder of the Golden Heart. That is the highest award in this country. So we are awarding him exactly for what? For performing his duty that, you know, he was supposed to announce the president, the winning president. So he does that, and we term him as a hero. Actually, there has been lots of conversations where he's been looked at as a hero. What is that battle that he fought? Are we just now throwing the word hero to every Tom, Dick and Harry that comes into the space? So you can imagine if you are having a football match which ends and one team wins, and then the team that wins awards the referee for being the best referee in the whole world.
Okay, that's laughable. Okay, that's an interesting way of seeing it. Wakili, he wants the forensic audit done by an independent body, and he even mentioned the Commonwealth, and he has trashed the DCI. He said, why should even the DCI be probing all this? We want an independent organization to probe the election, and he doesn't recognize. That is quite damaging to the national unity, based on the fact that the presidency, as enshrined in the Constitution, Wakili, is a symbol of national unity.
I think
and the senators coming in with the others. Where are we?
I think we are in that particular season where we are already inviting politics 101 into the governance of the country, and that's why I said it's still very sad that at this time when we're supposed to be strategizing on seeing how our kids get to school, how our fuel goes down, how our roads which stopped should be able to be revisited, and we'll be able to come up with better infrastructure. We are busy now talking about very funny things on how to invite the Commonwealth to come and check our election, which is not even constitutional, because I don't know which basis that is going to happen, because we are a constitutional country which is governed by the rule of law, and our constitution does not allow us to cede our sovereignty to different entities to come and tell us what it is that we are supposed to do. There is a clear mechanism on how to engage the foreign powers or foreign bodies, which I think it's politics. As you've said, there is the aspect of him mentioning that, and of course, as Torosterdt has just told us, that there's a precursor to that statement. That statement was just supposed to be thrown out there so that it stops something else from happening. I think what he was aiming at stopping is the aspect of DCI trying to probe, because we've actually been told that during the last Supreme Court hearing, there were some evidence which was tendered to the court, which was actually not very good evidence, and which, of course, bordered aspect of falsehood or fraud. And that's what the DCI actually, even the CJ, while reading the judgment, I remember she actually cautioned some of the advocates who are actually involved and told them, you should never do this because you are advocates who have taken an oath to say the truth, and when you start authoring documents which are actually, you know at the back of your mind they are not very credible documents, then that will lead even to you people being punished. So when the DCI starts looking at your people that way, you are bound to come with another thing, which is of course to tell people that, you know, the DCI is not competent to look into these things. We have even a better question, a better allegation, which should actually be looked at by not even the DCI, by foreign powers, so that you stop the process from and I think it's very sad. We just need to let the elections be. Of course, we need to audit it using our own particular mechanisms as we ought to see it fit, for purposes of posterity, because what happened, as Alenga has correctly put it, it was very shameful for us, and we do not actually deserve to have an election which brings so much shame to us as a country. So we need to audit the systems and look at it from a better perspective and come up with better laws, better policies, and better people, because remember, most of the commissioners have left, so we need to have a clean people come to office, and this is the right time to actually discuss such things. But in the midst of discussing such things, of course, there's mudslinging which is happening, so that we lose focus. So we actually need to be very careful as we go on with the process. We may do it in a very clear manner, though, that we end up getting what we want as a country and not engaging in side shows as it has started to come out.
Indeed, and if we look at what has been said and look at the social media, we see that a lot of people are talking about the government more or less taking this as more or less like a sideshow, because they know that they have failed in a number of things. One is the things that we had been told about. We're talking about taxes, lowering of taxes. We're talking about the high cost of living, which the Kenya Kwanza government really traded on that, and they were elected on that. We are also talking about the high cost of fuel and high cost of food, and that is still there. And is it okay if the opposition say this is just a plot? This is just a plot to just shift focus from the main things. They have not done anything. We almost, what, 4 or 5 months now? Alenga?
I think we are at a difficult place as a country, because if you try to take time to analyze what is happening from a very fair perspective, you'll realize that this country is on autopilot. And that is the reality, because one of the issues that were highlighted by the Kenya Kwanza regime as they were campaigning to get into office was the high cost of living. If you ask any Kenyan, whether, you know, from whatever divide you would wish, whether they have actually felt a drop in the prices of common commodities, the answer is no. If you tell them that their electricity is now going to 78% more than what they were paying, what is that really? If you look at the tax regime that is going higher and higher, becoming punitive each and every passing day. So then you ask yourself, what was this plan that the Kenya Kwanza regime was telling us to Kona plan, you know? And ideally, even if you look at the setup of the cabinet that the president has, you know, it was merely an issue of rewarding, you know, people that stood with him. And in one of his speeches, I think in Tharaka Nithi, the deputy president clearly said, you know, he was trying to enumerate whom they have awarded, and he was saying, in this particular area we have given so and so, you know, we have given you Kithure Kindiki, we have given you even the police boss, we have given you the DCI boss, so we will continue to give you more things. Kuna mambo bado inakuja, you know, that's what he said.
Yeah.
So clearly this was a government that is out to reward, you know. And then so after sitting in office, then we'll start figuring out, now what do we do? We now have the powers. What do we do with it? I am the CS for agriculture. What does actually a CS for agriculture do? I'm the CS for interior. What do they do? You know, that is why the issues that were there are still piling up on us. Do we have a change in the insecurity in the regions that had banditry attacks and all that? In fact, they've gone higher. In fact, the bandits attack on a day when the the CS has been there. When he leaves, they attack. So what are we really even solving? But on the contrary, the president is ready to answer Raila Odinga any minute he says, he speaks anything. You know, Raila would speak at 12, by around 2, you have a response from the president. How if he just had the same speed and agility while fixing countries' issues?
Okay, indeed, and let's take a quick breather, but we'll be back with more. Don't go away. Welcome back to News Check, and we are now on the last minutes of the show, and allow me now to introduce another panelist. He's Peter Amunga, educationist by profession, but also a very fierce politician and also political. And you are a very staunch supporter of Azimio. Even we were analyzing this before Kenya Kwanza, apologies. And we were analyzing this before even the election, and now you are in government.
Yes.
You're in government. I want you to take on the blackmail.
I love that.
The head of state said that the opposition is blackmailing us. Well, the opposition says that this is just a ploy to distract Kenyans from the real things. You haven't been able to do what the government said it was going to do. I would like to pick your mind on that.
Of course, being part of government and also using facts and logic. When you look at really what's happening, the timing, why the leader of the opposition can come from a trip abroad and straight to the airport and is able to mobilize, and when you look at the substance of really what he's talking about, you discover it's not something that you really can take home about, or it's either legal or something constitutional. It's all about things like how the chairman of IEBC visited him in his house. We find it to be some kind of the normal drama that happens whenever the leader of opposition loses. So we are saying there must be a sponsor behind it. There must be some faceless people behind it. And we have proved it. We saw an MCA from Korogocho. He's already arrested. We saw him spewing words that you can't speak to anybody, you know, words that are tribal, incitements. And what we are seeing is that somebody wants to return us to tyranny. But as government, we are saying we don't have time.
But
we have
the mix
things
of
to deliver to Kenyans.
Amunga, in
Yes.
the mix of all those, there are some pertinent issues which have arisen. Yes, the government has not been able to bring the cost of life down. Now we are hearing about the cost of electricity, which is about to go up from beginning of April.
Yes.
If at all the recommendation to April are anything to go by. Those are some of the pertinent issues that they campaigned, and the Kenya Kwanza government campaigned using. And nothing has happened.
Oh, don't say nothing. A lot of things have happened in the last
Kenyans want something they can see.
First of all, the Hustler Fund is already in place right now. I'm sure my brothers here must be beneficiaries. Then apart from the Hustler Fund, already the junior secondary...
You've come to the wrong show.
No, the junior secondary school are already on. We're already having our children already arriving in schools. We are already seeing a lot of, we have seen the judges, the judiciary. We saw Justice Muchelule, the people who had been left out of the judiciary. Right now they are seated on the bench.
My point again, Amunga, is that a Kenyan, me being a Kenyan, want to see something moving, you see? I want to see something, either cost of life or cost of living or cost of fuel or cost of food coming down. But whatever you're saying is peripheral.
It's not peripheral. Njue, the same people who are making noise at Jacaranda, the same people who are making noise at Kamkunji are the people who led us where we are today. The ditch we are in today, financially, economically, was brought about during the handshake. The borrowing that we are talking about started off. We found, as the deputy president...
But we've heard that there's still some more borrowing, eh?
Yes, we found the economy was ruined down. Actually, as we speak, the first things first, when we were campaigning to take over this country, there are things we didn't know. Sometimes you need to enter the house to discover some of the things that are in that house. When we got in the house, and the deputy president has made it very clear, it's not a joke. It's not comedy, as my brother thinks. It is a fact. We found the economy down. We have proof. We have talked about state capture. We have talked about all these things that people are not paying taxes. Things were happening behind the scenes that you cannot imagine. We have families in this country that owe this country 1.6 trillion in taxes alone. So when the president goes to Mombasa like yesterday and tells Kenyans that what we are seeing here are people who refuse to pay taxes, it is a fact. We have evidence. And the first things first, what walipe ushuru. You can't come to lectures on this kind of show when you are not paying taxes. We want taxes paid first. Alenga can talk about the
Njue, Amunga must be stopped because before he spreads a lot of more propaganda, and he's very good at that. Amunga, let's just look at these things from a very simple perspective. If Raila Odinga was being funded by anyone, including myself, if I had the money to organize for those rallies, and is it wrong? It's not wrong.
You can be for
political activity. It's very constitutional. Actually, for political mobilization, for political rallies, for dialogue, for the freedom of association and conscience, you can be funded by anyone to do anything. We are not talking about there was an attempt to topple a government. That's now a different conversation. But if you are getting facilitated to gather people in Kamukunji and speak to them, that is well within the purview of the law. And there's nothing wrong about that. And the president is sitting on the throne today because there are people who funded him. He's not going to tell us he got money from his pocket to win the presidential election. So for every presidential conversation, there are people who fund, and that's a fact. Why are we looking like Jerusalem is on fire?
All right. And Wakili, I would like to pick your mind on the same, because it's a good thing that you also mentioned it is in law. Before
I forget this, the president has all the power to bring everybody that is evading taxes to accountability. He doesn't need to joyride on an MP's meeting in Mombasa to tell us as a country. If he has a list of those people that are tax defaulters, go for them. Uhuru Kenyatta knew that Keroche was not paying taxes. He went for Keroche. He knew that the other Tiger brand was not paying taxes. He went for them. So when you know the people that are not paying taxes, go for them. Don't tell us. You have the government machinery. You have everything to do. Otherwise, that is empty talk.
Let's get the legal perspective from Wakili here. And Tolson has brought about good issues that if at all, let's go for these people. Let's just talk, talk in public gatherings. And being in a position of power, they can be able to do that. And still on the rallies, just that Amunga has talked about, Raila Odinga is not somebody who needs to be funded to pull the crowds. We have seen this over and over, year in, year out.
And if he gets funded, there's no condemnation.
I think this is just Tom in a teacup. I think the people in government need to get the agenda right of what it is that they're supposed to do. As I think I would want to agree with Alenga that it's not criminal for Raila to actually convene public gatherings to talk about issues which touch Mwananchi. And if there was anything criminal, that rally couldn't have happened. So Raila is just speaking to the hearts of his people, telling them, you know, you were promised 1, 2, 3. Does not come to pass. We need to first again reunite and then find our way forward to push government to deliver these things. Instead of government taking the cue from them and saying we are going to deliver 1, 2, 3, actually coming back to bastardize them, to actually condemn them, and forgetting their key role that they are now in government. They are behaving as if they were still in opposition. So I don't see anything wrong with what the opposition is doing, and government actually needs to start pulling up their socks and working. They should actually tell us that, you know, the issue you are complaining about, Ugali, we have put measures 1, 2, 3 to ensure that Ugali goes down. The issue of, we said that when the Bible goes down, the cost of living goes down. We have put 1, 2, 3 measures to ensure that that goes down. From the time we took over power, the president took over power, we have not seen fuel go down. It's actually gone up. Taxes have actually increased on every other aspect of life. So much as they are telling us that, you know, the people who were in the former regime never paid taxes, that's where they are funding, that is a ploy. Go for them. And much as they didn't pay taxes, but we are paying taxes. Why don't you tell us what you are doing with the taxes you are giving first before you start telling us that people have not paid? And I mean, why have you telling us? Why don't you just go for them and arrest them and arraign them in court? Or I mean, confiscate their property. I mean, poor Kenyans, if you don't pay tax, your property is taken away. You suffer the consequences right there and then. There is what is called it's a state agency which is actually out to ask every Kenyan, whatever wealth you have, you explain to them how you got it, which even goes against the criminal threshold, where that it's the government which is supposed to prove that you have this thing illegal. Now it's you actually supposed to prove how you got it. So there is every mechanism, there is every institution the government can be able to use to get this particular tax, but they don't do it. They're just politicking and telling us, you know, those people who were in the former regime are the one funding, they don't want to pay taxes. Those are lies.
Amunga, you want to respond to the allegation. And it's true, the government is always talking about the past.
No.
And the DP has been quoted like more than 20 times.
Prime Minister, Musalia Mudavadi. Every time you listen to Musalia, you will rarely hear politics. And actually, Musalia is the action part of government. When you look at his roles,
he's not talking.
No, listen, when you look at his roles, his roles are actually about that. You see, the president and the deputy president, they play both roles. They can play the political role, they also can play the executive role. But you see, the prime minister, who speaks now the role that goes down with work in government, has proved to us, to Kenyans, that this government is working. Let me tell you, there are some things you don't need to speak in public. The truth of the matter is, people who it's something called due process. You are not going to arrest somebody from the street and tell him you are not paying taxes and take him to jail. As Wakili puts it, yes, you are first identified, then the records have to be brought somewhere. The DPP has to write a file on you. If it is the EAC has to write a file on you, it is that file that will be presented to court before anything now goes. So it all starts with something called due process. A Kenyan cannot just be arrested.
Doing a lot of politics.
So this politics is to show Kenyans that we are not just sleeping. The deputy president has been on record many times telling us the cartels in the coffee industry, the cartels in the tea industry are facing it rough. They may not come out to a show like this one and tell us that I'm getting it rough. Many of the doors and the windows that they have been using to cut out money and funds meant for Kenyans have already been shut. The tax evasion that we have been talking about, right now most of those companies actually are paying tax. What we are now talking about is what they didn't pay. They're behind. That's now what they're talking about to recover that, and that is due process. But just to say something else, Kenyans, we can't continue just being a politicking society, just talking. When you accuse government of doing politics, you are forgetting that the other fingers are also pointing at the opposition. The opposition is doing more politics than anything else.
They should.
If they were to do the check and balances on government, what motion have they brought in parliament to show us, to put the government in check? What thing have they brought out tangible, apart from telling us about Chebukati? What else? Tell me something different.
I'm quite sure that after the recess the coming month, we're going to be having fireworks. And another thing, when we're talking about when I'm in power, it's like when I'm in my house and I'm saying that there's somebody in this house who's not doing A, B, C, D, and it's my own house. You know, because we'll talk about cartels. This is the best time, this is the best opportunity to have the names in the tea industry, the coffee industry. We have Gisore, who is the cartel, the main cartel in the coffee industry. In the tea industry, we have Mwalimu Amunga. In we have Alenga. But we still have the cartels, and we have the mask on. It's the time to peel back the mask.
And it's true, and that is the point. The only problem is we have something in this country called due process. Kenya is not a banana republic. You may know something about Mwalimu Amunga, but you will not just go and pick him on the streets and deal with him. This Wakili we seated here with us will tell you, you won't touch me even if somebody can touch me here. Because at the end of the day, the country, and one time President Uhuru Kenyatta said it, and when he said it, we thought he was joking. Uhuru Kenyatta asked a group of people who are seated at State House, he said, my hands are tied. Do you know how his hands are tied? And I've said it on this show with Alenga many times. Our lawyers took over most of this constitution, and I blame them, and one of them is seated here. They wrote our constitution. They put in so many of those things they call checks and balances, mostly to enrich themselves. There is nothing you can do in this country without a lawyer trying to cross in front of you and say this is wrong, should have done it this way, this is the due process. The problem in this country, and Uhuru Kenyatta said it, my hands are tied. I may get somebody and take him to the court, but if I don't have the evidence, I don't have everything ready, that person will walk scot-free.
All right.
Let me just respond, because
Amunga is agreeing with what we are saying.
Actually, yeah.
That you know, don't just proclaim things outside there. Follow the due process and bring these people to book. When you go to a gathering and tell us people are refusing to pay taxes in this country, people are cartels in this country, you know what? The consequence of that, you're a whining president. You're telling us you are as helpless as we are. So whom do we run to if there is a cartel finishing the country? If you have executive power to bring that to an end, please do it.
All right, and still, because of the interest of time, something that the president has been passionate about is the creation of the office of the official opposition. Just like Amunga is talking about, the opposition is not doing anything. There will be quite a strong office. Gisore, what does it take for us to have that office? And bearing in mind that now the opposition, led by Azimio, don't recognize the president or the presidency, does this change the matrix?
I think it's also, from me, I can actually see it's politics 101, which is being played, because you want to get the people in opposition out of the streets, and then you put them in government office so that they can actually be able to be spoken to in a manner that they can be able to understand. And to look into that story keenly, you will actually realize it's trying to paralyze Azimio. Because who is going to be given that particular docket? It means if you take Raila, it means Kalonzo will be unhappy and the rest of the other people in Azimio will be unhappy. It means now we worked for you and you are in office. Because that office is going to come with a package, and that package is what is not going to be enjoyed by the other people you are fighting with. So that is, I think, I'm reading politics into that. But there's no problem in having that, because that has been the talk of town, that we actually need the leader of opposition checking government from parliament. But now the agenda behind it is what we cannot be able to tell, and we can be able to read a lot of politics into that. If it could be out of a clean heart that we actually need that, and then we have mechanisms, and of course the constitution be looked at to ensure that this office is established, then there wouldn't be any problem. But what time is it being raised? What is the agenda? That is where the problem lies. And let me respond to what my good panelist Amunga has just said, that you know, the lawyers made the constitution to be able to favor themselves. The president himself yesterday, if I heard him correctly, he said he participated in the process of making the constitution, and he actually ensured, he's very aware. He said he's very lucky. How can Amunga be speaking from government and actually disowning that it's only the lawyers who made the constitution? It's actually not true.
The president participated, but you remember he was on the no side. So
Amunga, you have the freedom to speak the way you're speaking because of the constitution. So you cannot actually be enjoying the same right while actually using it to castigate and saying, you know, these lawyers. That is further from the truth. What the government needs to do is to stop this scaremongering and, of course, mudslinging the opposition and actually get to work. Amunga is agreeing with what we are saying, that actually he does not have evidence of the things he actually is talking about. That's why they have not arrested these people. So it's actually they are playing politics instead of working. So I think he has ended up coming to our side without knowing.
All right. Troy, just a small thing to point out. If you look at the entire length of our constitution, if you read it, all the articles, the constitution only gives mandate to the president and defines what the president shall do. Our constitution therefore lacks to define what the opposition does. So everything that the opposition does then must be extra constitutional. Yeah, because there is no definition of the office of the what the
have the final say. Have the final say.
Parents take advantage of the junior secondary. It's already on. Take your children. The minister has already declared it's 15,000 shillings per child per the capitation. Things are running. This government is running. It is nothing like anybody sleeping on the job. Our president is one of the people who wakes up early in the morning. Our ministers are up to the task. We are ready to serve this country. Ignore the noise coming from Kampunji and Jacaranda.
All right. Well said. That is Peter Amunga. We have Torosterdt and Alenga. Both are governance experts. It's a good thing you have put in that education point, because you are also an educationist and you also had a constitutional lawyer who is also a political analyst. That is Gibson Gisore. Thank you so much indeed for joining. Let's continue this conversation on social media. I'm BenTroy Njue, and earlier on we had Lensa Odingo as our sign language interpreter. Now we have Susan Thuku as our sign language interpreter. The show continues. I'm giving the baton to the Swahili desk with Kurunzi Mashinani and Tamrini. Do have yourself a blessed afternoon. And gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. For your insight as well. Amunga, you should have come earlier. So that maybe you could have been roasted, I see.
I found when they already had their benchmark.
That's a valid point. A valid point. Valid point.
Oh my God.
Thank you so much indeed, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure.
Amunga is checking with fake news.